On today's show, Reggie Chatman of 11 Alive News in Atlanta is going to join us to talk all things Georgia Bulldogs, as well as some other topics from across the SEC. Is the Georgia defense the best ever? Also, who are some names we should keep an eye on for the next head coach at LSU? Does Tennessee have any chance to hang around with Alabama this week? Locked on SEC starts now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On SEC, everybody. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and LockedOnSEC.com. All right, we got plenty we got to get into. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Makes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over at Vanderbilt as Clark Lee had a decision to make on his quarterback. He saw backup quarterback Mike Wright come in and have a solid performance last week in the last-minute loss to South Carolina. And because starting quarterback Ken Seals is dealing with a finger injury, Mike Wright will give it another go this week against Mississippi State. Ken Seals missed the South Carolina game because of that finger injury on his throwing hand, and it's not yet at 100%. Wright last week nearly pulled off the win at South Carolina. He went 11 for 21, throwing for 206 yards with a touchdown and a pick. Also had 15 carries for 41 yards. So we'll see what Mike Wright can do. Over at Georgia, JT Daniels, quarterback, has not played for the Bulldogs since September 25th, almost a month ago. And since then, backup quarterback Stetson Bennett has been getting the job done. Dogs now have an off week ahead of the cocktail party next week in Jacksonville against Florida. On Tuesday, head coach Kirby Smart met with the media and talked about JT Daniels' status. Smart said Daniels is throwing more in practice, according to Seth Emerson. Kirby said Daniels will see an uptick in his pitch count in practice this week. He threw about 70 passes on Monday, and he said they'll know more later today and hopefully get him some quality reps before this week is over. Also on Tuesday, Kirby Smart was asked by reporters, hey, what's going on with Eric Gilbert, the five-star tight end that was at LSU, transferred this offseason, went to Florida, then didn't go to Florida, then ended up at Georgia, and hasn't seen the field. Kirby Smart said that Eric Gilbert remains away from the team and isn't sure if he will be back this season. Kirby said, quote, everyone is pulling for him. So obviously the young man dealing with some personal issues. They were hoping to make that transition from tight end to wide receiver and see him on the field, but so far he has not been out there, and it sounds like he won't be out there this season for the Bulldogs. Speaking of Georgia, the Georgia-Kentucky game last week was a ratings hit, according to CBS Sports. The game, which Georgia won 30-13, was the most watched game this past Saturday. Drew 6.3 million viewers, up 64% from 2019, and was the most watched game played between the team since 1997. For the last 3 weeks, CBS has had the most watched college football games to air than any network and has won the weekend 4 out of the last 5 weeks. So really impressive. And like, CBS does a good job picking the right matchups every week to draw people's interest and ratings. Over in Knoxville, more details continue to emerge from the mayhem at Neyland Stadium on Saturday night during the Ole Miss-Tennessee game. University of Tennessee police have released some details about arrests and ejections. Preliminary reports show 18 people have been arrested and 47 people were ejected from the stadium on Saturday night. University chancellor said that officials are trying to identify those responsible, and perpetrators would lose the ability to attend future games if it was found that they had thrown debris on the field. The SEC on Monday issued a $250,000 fine to the Vols. And while the conference is not suspending alcohol sales at Neyland Stadium, it does reserve the right to do so if other requirements are not met. Don't do it again, Tennessee. You don't want to not be able to buy alcohol in the stadium. Over in Starkville, Mississippi State's quarterback room currently down a player. Bulldogs head coach Mike Leach telling reporters on Monday that Jack Abraham is not currently with the team. If you remember, Abraham battled with Will Rogers for the starting quarterback job throughout the offseason. And at one point in the spring game, some people thought Jack Abraham maybe looked better than Will Rogers. So ultimately, Abraham not with the team. He was a transfer coming in from Southern Miss. And over in South Carolina, they announced big improvements coming to Williams-Brice Stadium for next season. The athletic department announced the Board of Trustees signed off on a series of improvements, including a West Main concourse expansion, new elevators. South Carolina says the new ribbon boards throughout the Stadium Bowl, an addition of LED stadium lights, are also coming to Williams-Brice Stadium by the start of next season. The West Main concourse is a $2.3 million project that will be completed next year. So, seeing this across the conference, a lot of teams are making big-time improvements, spending millions of dollars, and the LED lights are something that recruits really like. Fans seem to enjoy. The ones at Alabama and Tennessee are pretty impressive. And lastly, Ole Miss is going to honor Eli Manning on Saturday. They're going to add a new paint scheme to the end zone at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium as a nod toward a number one recruit. They're going to promote Eli Manning Day on Saturday against LSU. They tweeted out, when a legend returns home, you roll out the red carpet. The ceremony was originally planned for last year, but with the pandemic and all that, they moved it to this year. The Rebels will honor Eli on Saturday with his jersey retirement ceremony, and the day will serve as a reminder for what the star quarterback did in Oxford. On Monday, Lane Kiffin said the ceremony would drum up even more hype for the game. The subplot is it'll be a visit from Arch Manning, Eli Manning's nephew, who, of course, is the number one recruit in the class of 2023. So, a not so subtle move to add to Ole Miss's recruiting pitch to him. So, there you go. There you have it. That is around the conference. When we return, we're going to talk with our buddy Reggie Chatman from 11 Alive News. That's next. Need to remind you guys about our friends over at PrizePicks. If you're a college football fanatic, you've probably heard about PrizePicks. Have you tried them yet? PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know you guys will too. PrizePicks is a leader in college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football props than anyone in the world. Got all the star players from Power 5 and major players. Any prop you think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. It's really cool. It is daily fantasy sports. Go check out their app. You can find it on the App Store and Google Play. It's an award-winning app. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. PrizePicks is safe, and they offer fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Go check out prizepicks.com. Make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON. Go to the App Store. Download the app today. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC, and man, it is a pleasure to catch up with this guy from 11 Alive News in Atlanta, Reggie Chatman. He joins us now. I had some technical issues, but I think we got it figured out. Reggie, what's going on, man?
Man, excited to be here. Like we said, technology got it figured out, so I'm feeling real good about it now.
I want to jump right into it, Reggie, because you've worked across the SEC, from the SEC West to now the SEC East over in Atlanta. You got to love working in the South and getting to cover, where everybody's just passionate college football fans, from Louisiana all the way to Georgia.
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, it doesn't get much better than covering two teams that people really, really care about, the two teams, and have had some success during the time that I've been here. I mean, I've just been in Atlanta for about 3 short months now, and I've got to cover Georgia for that entire time. And I mean, this team is very good, and it feels a lot like that 2019 LSU team, where that team just felt like every single week they're going to blow out or they're going to beat whoever they put in front of them. Those teams are obviously very, very different. I mean, this Georgia team is more built on defense, while that LSU team in 2019 was more built on the fact that Joe Burrow is the best quarterback that college football has seen in the SEC in a very long time, if not ever. So that offense was historic. That team was historic. And I think that this Georgia team has a chance to be just as historic as well.
Well, let's talk about it. What is it about this Georgia defense that you've seen firsthand? I mean, what makes them so good? Obviously, they've got some monsters up front. Jordan Davis is huge. I got to interview him at SEC Media Days. But what is it about this Georgia defense that makes them so special?
You're right. It's that front seven. I mean, Jordan Davis kind of gets a lot of the headlines because he's up front. But, I mean, at the end of the day, this Georgia team has had some issues, I guess, in the secondary just because of the amount of injuries. Guys are just getting hurt. I mean, this is a team that has had its fair share of injuries throughout this season. And yet, because of how good that front seven is, I mean, it makes it so much easier for this team to be able to handle things up front. I mean, when you're that explosive up front, and especially in the SEC where it's so important to be so good up front defensively, this team has everything. They're big, they're fast, they're strong, they pursue to the football. And I mean, it just feels like everything's come together for this season to kind of be a peak of what this Georgia team has wanted to be over the last couple of years. I mean, last year they were good. They were definitely good. They had some issues at quarterback, just trying to figure that out. And the defense was good. And you get a lot of those guys back. And I mean, with another year of experience, they've really, really started to peak this season, and they're still starting to get better. And that's kind of the crazy thing about it. This team continues to try and get better, even after big wins over the last couple of weeks and games that are top 10 and top 15 and top 25 ranked. I mean, this team continues to handle their business, and it's really just how disruptive they are at the front seven.
I think what's so crazy about this team, Reggie, is, we talk about the defense, but how about the offense? You get a stud like JT Daniels, who comes in last year from USC. He's hurt to start the year. He ends up eventually getting in there. They don't lose a game the rest of the way. And then this season, he's had this banged up injury that's just been kind of nagging with him. But man, what a luxury to have a guy like Stetson Bennett, who's not flashy. He's not going to jump off the page or anything. But man, I keep calling him the ultimate game manager. The guy just gets it done. And man, it's a perfect weapon for Georgia to have to just keep this train rolling.
It's fantastic, really. And it's really a kind of an embarrassment of riches, because at the end of the day, last year, one of the biggest issues was the quarterback position. They felt like they felt weird with Stetson because they didn't know exactly what they wanted to do. They're hoping that JT would come back. And I mean, this year, because of the amount of experience that Stetson had playing last year in big games, getting big wins, and being in this offense under Kirby Smart, I mean, it feels like Stetson Bennett's been in Georgia for a really long time because, of course, he was here as a walk-on. He left. He came back. I mean, the guy can really play. And honestly, even better than that, it just feels good for a guy like that to be able to continue to prove himself, because after last year, he thought he might not ever play again. So for him to step in and play well as he has, it's been great. And plus, you mentioned that kind of game manager aspect. It's funny because he does have that. And when you've got a team like this, you don't have to be asked to do very much. But at the end of the day, he does just enough. And there's some things he does even better than JT Daniels might. I mean, JT Daniels is not the runner that Stetson Bennett is. He's not. And it adds an extra dimension to this offense that Kirby Smart loves to be able to kind of take advantage of with Stetson in the game. So it's funny, he's been playing so well that the question now is, going forward, what do you do? I mean, he's gone through these last 4 games just very, very good. I mean, he's, I think, 4-0 as a starter this season. I mean, he's played really well in every one of his starts. He's not really made that many mistakes. He's throwing the deep ball. He's handing off the ball when he needs to. He's leading the offense like they're asking him to. And I mean, it feels like, I hate when people say stuff like about how, look, me and you could probably lead this Georgia offense just because of how good they are up front. And I mean, the offense, but at the end of the day, Stetson Bennett does a good enough job to where he's making the explosive plays that they need to. He's throwing the ball with accuracy when they needs to. He runs when he needs to. I mean, and this team trusts and relies on him. So I think at the end of the day, people need to put a little bit more respect on Stetson Bennett's name, because I think he's a really good player, especially in this offense. And he's done a good enough job to where JT is healthy enough to come back. It is a conversation of really, who do you really want leading this offense?
Is it crazy? I mean, they're so good at running the football, and I knew they would be this year. But, man, I thought by this point somebody would emerge from the pack as like, okay, that's the bell cow. But they're doing a great job of just handing off to all the different backs and kind of spreading the ball around.
You're right, and it's been really interesting to see. And I think for this Georgia team, that's kind of what it's about. When I kind of started here, when I was having conversations in and around the area with talking to different people, I mean, it feels like this Georgia team doesn't have like a star. You know what I mean? They don't have like a star that you're like, all right, this is the guy that is box office. This is the guy that we really want to go out and see play on Saturday. JT kind of was that guy, but of course he's hurt. You know what I mean? And that's partly just because he's a quarterback. You know what I mean? So this team, that's kind of their mentality. There's nobody that really stands out as the marquee player on this team. And I think for that reason, they all feel like as long as they handle their job and do their work, then they can handle what they need to handle. And so I think the best thing about it also is that offensive line also is continued to try and prove they can run the football as well. I mean, every single week, it seems like they're getting better and better. This offense is starting to click a little bit more. I mean, at the beginning of the year, crazy enough, there was questions on if they could run the football. It didn't feel like your classic Georgia offense where we're just going to ground and pound you and just run it down your throat. But I mean, they made plays when they needed to. They ran the ball when they needed to. Even in that Clemson game where they struggled running the football, they ran the ball when they needed to at the end of the game and run out the clock. And as the season has progressed, that offensive line's gotten better. These backs have gotten a little bit better. And this offense is rolling, both running the football and passing it as well.
Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. When we return, I'm going to talk some broader SEC topics with Reggie Chatman right after this. Always a good time to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you're missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. You have to try one of these amazing bars for yourself to believe it. No chalky aftertaste like some of those protein bars out there. Many protein bars are waxy or just plain hard to choke down. A Built Bar is soft, covered in 100% real chocolate. When you bite into it, you know you're eating something different. It's more of an experience, one that you'll enjoy. In fact, you'll swear you're eating a candy bar. Built Bars are low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, high in protein, all the healthy benefits on top of just being purely delicious. So many flavors. Go check them out right now, BuiltBar.com. Use our promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off over at BuiltBar.com. Need to also remind you guys about our friends at BetOnline.ag. They are back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the college basketball season and NBA season. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all things basketball, football, even MLB playoffs. They got it for you. Head over there right now. You got an updated desktop or mobile website. You could sign up today. And if you've never signed up before, you get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus from basketball, football, baseball, postseason, everything you can think of. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for you at BetOnline.ag. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Right along here, Locked On SEC, and pleasure to be joined with our special guest, Reggie Chatman from 11 Alive Sports in Atlanta. And Reggie, we've been talking a little bit about the Georgia Bulldogs. I want to pull it out a little bit more broad to the SEC. And man, a team that you covered throughout, you mentioned that 2019 season of the LSU championship season and all that. Crazy to see a coach like Coach O reach the mountaintop, the high, and now the very low where he's been announced you're fired. You're going to finish out the season as the head coach. That's crazy. But what do you make of all that? And give me a name or two that you're looking at that you would love to see as the next head coach at LSU.
Man, look, I mean, it's been really, really weird. I mean, it's the thing that I like to bring up the fact that how much of a star he kind of was when he won that championship in 2019. I mean, at the end of the day, Ed Orgeron was a guy that because he sounds like the people of Louisiana, people always make jokes about, how he sounds and his attitude and stuff like that, but it's almost exactly perfectly fitting into what LSU is. I mean, he is kind of the perfect mascot for this team back in 2019, especially when he was winning. But I think, everything kind of compounded in a crazy way after the 2019 season. He gets that huge contract. And I mean, it seems like they're 9-8 over the last 2 years after that championship. And I think a lot of it goes down to the fact that the play on the field hasn't been very good, but also when you add to the fact that it's been the other little off the field issues. I mean, that's not the reason he was fired, but it definitely didn't help. I mean, just everything from all the stories that have kind of come out between the Athletic and SI, just about, what he's been doing off the field, the sissy blue shirt comment. I mean, the photos with him with women off the field. I mean, and at the end of the day, look, I like to say this. I mean, you can do whatever you want with your free time and stuff like that. And I think at the end of the day, if Ed Orgeron was doing all these things, all this stuff was happening, and they were winning, I don't think it really would matter that much. You know what I mean? But because they're not playing that well, it's just kind of added to what kind of a case for what they were trying to do to try and get rid of Ed Orgeron. So, I mean, it's real interesting to see what they're kind of do going forward. I think for me, I mean, there's a lot of conversations about who they want. I mean, Scott Woodward, the AD, is a guy that's going to be going big game hunting for sure. I mean, he was back at A&M and he beat out LSU to get Jimbo Fisher back in the day. I mean, right. He's really a big game hunter. He brings in Kim Mulkey, who's won multiple national championships at Baylor. The only place that she would possibly go and leave Baylor is LSU, and he offered the money, and he got her here. I think it's going to be the same thing with this LSU job. I think LSU is a top 2 program. I mean, with job-wise, I mean, you want that Alabama job, that's not coming up for at least another 3-4 years, right? The USC job is huge. But personally, as somebody that's lived both on the West Coast and in the South, if you're going to take a job, I'd recommend taking it in the SEC just because of how much bigger a deal it is. I mean, this is a school that's won 3 national championships with 3 different coaches in the last 20 years. I mean, it's just a raucous environment. My sister goes to USC. Those games are not crazy. I mean, it's a different thing. Football in the West is something that people do. It's not the thing that people do like it is in Baton Rouge or in Tuscaloosa or in Athens. It's a small little city, and people handle their business. They go to the games because that's what they want to do. So I think for me, my first choice would probably be Mel Tucker over there at Michigan State. I mean, he's a guy that had turned around programs very, very quickly. I mean, at the end of the day, he was over at he's part of the Saban tree, I believe, and like everybody else, he's another guy that can really turn a program around. I mean, it seems like LSU is going to be going after a lot of big names like Mel Tucker or the guys Penn State or just really anywhere. I mean, it's a school where you're going to offer the money to get the guy who you want. So I think for me, Mel Tucker would be the pick. And I think it's also because William Tate, who is the new president at LSU, the first African-American president, I think in the entire SEC, especially at LSU, there is some feeling of maybe trying to get a guy like or maybe a minority coach maybe into the position. I'm not saying it's the main reason, but I mean, at the end, because you want to get the best possible option, but that could be an extra aspect to all of this. You know what I mean? So Mel Tucker's my personal pick. He's a guy that's turned around a program. He's got that Michigan State team undefeated and in the top 10 right now, but this is a better job than Michigan State. And you get better recruits, better location. You don't have to try and deal with going up against schools like Michigan or Ohio State. I mean, just to try and get that recruiting. LSU speaks for itself. So Mel Tucker would be my pick.
Yeah, James Franklin, another name I think would be great for them. Anybody who can win at Vandy, I think, can win at LSU, and we'll see if his name is considered. All right, Reggie, last thought I just wanted to get from you. Tennessee is playing at Alabama this weekend. It is the third Saturday in October. We still call this a rivalry for some reason, but Alabama has won 14 straight in the series. Does Tennessee have any chance to keep this one close in Tuscaloosa this weekend?
Man, they have a better chance than they've had in recent years. I mean, I think I'm thinking back to 2 years ago when the game was in Tennessee, or maybe it was 3 years ago now, where they had a chance where things just snowballed out of control. Guarantano had that ball, I think, on the 1 or the 2 yard line. I think he fumbled it, and they returned it for a touchdown. And from there, it was all downhill. That's kind of what it's like when you're playing against Alabama. You can't make mistakes. This team is better than recent years. They run they run a lot of offense very quickly. You know what I mean? And they did things in this last game against Ole Miss that make you feel like they, could be good. It's going to be interesting to see how the injuries kind of shake out and how they play going forward. But personally, I'm never going to ever bet against Alabama. I'm not going to bet against just that team because that team is good. They're very good. And they're trying to continue to prove that they're the best team in the country, even though they're, I think, top 4 right now, but they have that one loss to Texas A&M. I mean, you hear guys like Nick Saban saying, well, we're not elite anymore. You know what I mean? It's not true. They're very elite, and they're going to try and prove it against a Tennessee team that feels like this might be the first year that they can try and win this game. And plus, it's at Alabama. I just don't like their chance of trying to get a win at Alabama when Nick Saban is continuing to push his guys and really beat down some teams at the end of the year so people don't try to disrespect them at the end of the season.
Yeah, it is crazy. And, look, I'm all for protecting rivalries and all that, but, man, let's get rid of these permanent rivalries. When Tennessee can even stay on the field with Alabama, why do you want to keep getting your brains beat in every year? Let's just do away with the permanent crossovers and mix up the – look, Texas and Oklahoma are coming in soon, all right? We can't keep these permanent rivalry games up. It's just not going to last. Reggie Chatman, 11 Alive Sports in Atlanta. Let everybody know where they can find your work, man.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of it at Reggie Chatman, just my name, ReggieChatman. I like to tweet a lot. I like to make jokes. Instagram is also my friend, Facebook as well. And also you can watch all of our stuff on 11 Alive TV or at 11alive.com. Be doing the Georgia stuff, of course, this next couple of weeks. They're on a bye this week, but we're going to continue to do some more coverage here heading into the last back half of the season. This is a team that can really make a deep run, and so we're going to try and show that out in a big way.
Yeah, we had your colleague Maria Martin on a few weeks ago. You guys do a fantastic job covering all things Georgia Bulldogs right there in Atlanta. Reggie, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks again.
All right, there he is, Reggie Chatman of 11 Alive Sports. That is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Appreciate you guys for listening, and we will be back tomorrow. You made us your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen. Listen to some of our other great podcasts on the Locked On Podcast Network. Check out Locked On Vols with Eric Kane. Check out Locked On Bama, Locked On LSU. Plenty of podcasts to check out. I'm Chris Gordy. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.